We don't fall out of love in a single moment. Love doesn't just switch off like a light. It fades. Slowly, silently, almost invisibly at first. And often the first sign that something is slipping isn't shouting or slamming doors. It's the silence where there used to be touch. It's the distance that begins to grow between two people who used to reach for each other without even thinking. Sex is not just a physical act. It's not about performance or frequency or fireworks. It's about connection. It's how we say, I see you, I choose you, and I still want you. When sex begins to disappear, it usually signals something deeper, something emotional. Not because love is gone, but because love is slowly being forgotten, neglected, taken for granted. In the beginning, we're full of intention. Every text matters. Every kiss feels electric. Every touch is an invitation, a declaration, a promise. But over time, we stop being intentional and start becoming automatic. The good morning kiss becomes routine, if it happens at all. The compliments fade. The curiosity fades. Intimacy is not just about physical closeness or sexual activity. At its core, intimacy is a reflection of emotional safety. It is the sense of being seen, heard, understood, and accepted without judgment. When we feel emotionally safe with someone, we naturally open ourselves up. We share more. We take more risks. We reveal not just what we do, but who we are. Intimacy flourishes in environments where we feel secure, where vulnerability is met with empathy rather than criticism, and where connection is based on honesty instead of fear. In many relationships, emotional safety begins to erode long before the relationship itself ends. It doesn't start with a big betrayal or an explosive argument. It begins quietly, with a harsh tone, a dismissive response, or a moment when one partner opens up and the other isn't present. Over time, these moments accumulate, and the emotional climate of the relationship starts to shift. When emotional safety is lost, intimacy becomes difficult. Because intimacy requires trust, and trust cannot grow in unsafe soil. People often assume that if intimacy is lacking in a relationship, the problem is physical, but more often, it's emotional distance that's the true cause. When someone stops feeling emotionally safe, they begin to pull back. They stop sharing their thoughts. They stop expressing their needs. They might even stop touching their partner or desiring closeness, not out of rejection, but out of self-protection. Physical intimacy becomes less frequent, less passionate, and sometimes disappears entirely, not because love is gone, but because safety is. The most common way people react to this emotional disconnection is by focusing on behavior. They say things like, "We never have sex anymore," or "You never hug me like you used to." While those observations are valid, they are symptoms, not the root cause. The real issue is that something in the relationship no longer feels emotionally safe enough to support intimacy. Maybe one partner feels judged. Maybe the other feels unappreciated. Maybe both have been silently keeping score instead of speaking up. Whatever the reason, the emotional environment has changed, and with it, the connection has weakened. Creating emotional safety means being present, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. It means listening without trying to fix, responding without attacking, and being willing to hold space for your partner's pain, confusion, or even silence. It's about letting go of the need to be right in favor of being kind. It's about being curious instead of defensive, even when it's hard. And it's about making the relationship a place where both people can show up as their full selves, not just the parts that are easy to love. When emotional safety is restored, intimacy begins to rebuild, often slowly but meaningfully. Conversations deepen, touch returns, trust is repaired, and most importantly, the relationship starts to feel like a home again, not a battleground. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without effort, but when two people commit to creating emotional safety, they give themselves the foundation for real, lasting intimacy. Intimacy is not sustained by physical closeness alone. It lives in the quiet, consistent acts of emotional presence. It grows when we choose connection over avoidance, understanding over reaction, and compassion over control. When we feel safe, we lean in, we hold hands longer, we kiss without rushing, we open our hearts. And when that kind of safety exists, intimacy becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Love, like anything that matters, doesn't just survive by being present, it thrives by being nurtured. And too often, what starts as something intentional between two people slowly morphs into routine. We mistake repetition for stability, and in doing so, we drain the relationship of the very spark that once brought it to life. The truth is, love thrives on ritual, not routine. There's a subtle but powerful difference between the two. Routine is what we do automatically. It's the cup of coffee made without eye contact. It's the I love you said out of habit as one walks out the door. Routine is efficient, yes, but love was never meant to be efficient. It was meant to be felt. Ritual, on the other hand, is intentional. It's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it and why you do it. Ritual adds meaning to moments that could otherwise be ordinary. It says, this matters, you matter, we matter. Ritual transforms the everyday into something sacred. It takes the mundane and turns it into a moment of connection. That's why the same act, a kiss, a text, a dinner, can feel completely different depending on whether it's done with presence or just out of obligation. Think about how we fall in love. In the beginning, everything is new. We plan date nights, we listen closely, we remember the little things, we write notes, we ask deep questions. None of it feels like effort because we're fully invested. But over time, as life piles up and stress takes over, those small, deliberate acts begin to slip. We stop asking how each other's really doing. We stop dressing up for each other. They eat dinner together but stare at our phones. The rituals we once created together, whether it was a Sunday morning walk, a midweek check-in, or a shared playlist, get lost in the noise of responsibility. And what's left is routine, predictable, functional. The danger with routine is that it creates the illusion of stability while love quietly starves. We think because we're still doing the same thing, sleeping in the same bed, managing the same household, that the connection is still there. But connection isn't measured by presence alone. It's measured by intention, by attention, by effort. Ritual is a conscious decision to keep love alive. It's the difference between asking, did you have a good day, and really listening to the answer. It's taking the time to look someone in the eyes when you say, I love you, instead of muttering it on the way out the door. It's choosing to put the phone down at dinner. It's holding hands during a walk, even after 10 years. It's remembering to say thank you, not because you have to, but because you genuinely appreciate them. These rituals are not about grand gestures. They're about small, meaningful moments done with full presence. They require mindfulness, not money. They don't demand perfection. They require participation. When both people in a relationship commit to nurturing rituals, instead of falling into routine, the relationship stays vibrant. It breathes, it grows, it stays awake. Love can survive on routine for a while, but it won't thrive. Thriving takes care. It takes waking up each day and choosing to see your partner with fresh eyes. It takes celebrating the ordinary. It takes effort. Not exhausting, overwhelming effort, but the kind that says, I haven't forgotten why we started this. Because at the heart of every lasting relationship is not just love, but the daily choice to love on purpose. Ritual makes that possible. And in a world full of distractions and deadlines, love deserves at least that much. Silence in the bedroom is rarely just about sex. It's a quiet signal that something deeper is happening, something emotional, something unspoken. When physical intimacy fades, it's easy to focus on the behavior, the lack of touch, the absence of desire, the awkward space between two people who used to reach for each other. But that silence carries more weight than we often admit. It echoes into the heart. It seeps into the emotional connection and begins to erode the sense of closeness that once felt so natural. Most couples don't go to bed one night deeply in love and wake up the next day as strangers. The drift is gradual. It begins with unspoken disappointments, unresolved arguments, or unacknowledged feelings. Over time, small moments of disconnection accumulate. One person feels ignored, the other feels unappreciated. The emotional distance grows, and without even realizing it, the bedroom becomes quieter, not just in sound, but in energy. The spark dims, not because people stop loving each other, but because they stop feeling emotionally safe. Physical intimacy thrives on trust and vulnerability. It requires both people to feel seen and accepted. When that foundation is shaken, whether by resentment, stress, emotional neglect, or simply the wear and tear of everyday life, intimacy begins to feel more like pressure than connection. Touch becomes rare. Kisses lose their meaning. And slowly the silence takes over This silence doesn't only live in the bedroom. It ripples outward. It creates tension in conversations, distance in everyday interactions, and an underlying sense that something is off, even if no one is saying it out loud. You start to feel alone, even when you're together. You start questioning your worth, your attractiveness, your value in the relationship. You begin to wonder, is it me? Is it us? Are we broken? But instead of talking about it, many couples avoid it. They pretend it's just a phase. They blame busyness, kids, stress, anything but the real issue, which is a growing emotional gap that neither person knows how to cross. That silence becomes a kind of language. It communicates pain, confusion, detachment. It says something's wrong without anyone ever needing to speak. And that's the danger. Because the longer the silence lingers, the harder it becomes to break. What used to be vulnerability gets replaced with self-protection. Instead of reaching out, we retreat. Instead of leaning in, we build walls. And in doing so, we lose not just physical connection, but emotional intimacy. Rebuilding that bridge starts with courage. It means facing what's really going on beneath the silence. It requires honest conversations, not just about sex, but about feelings, about what's missing, what hurts, what each person needs but hasn't known how to ask for. It means creating a space where both people can feel heard without judgment. It also means being willing to go first, to be the one who speaks into the silence and says, I miss us. The goal isn't to fix everything overnight. It's to start closing the gap. Maybe it's through touch, maybe it's through conversation, maybe it's just through sitting together without distractions, being fully present. But whatever the step, the most important thing is to acknowledge that the silence is not just about physical distance, it's about emotional disconnect that needs tending. Love doesn't fade in dramatic moments, it fades in the quiet ones, the ones we overlook. But silence doesn't have to mean the end, it can be an invitation, a wake-up call, a moment that says it's time to listen, it's time to reconnect, it's time to remember what brought us together in the first place. When we honor that silence instead of ignoring it, we give ourselves the chance to turn it into something healing instead of something hollow. And from that place, real intimacy, emotional and physical, can begin to grow again. Desire is not something that simply burns on its own forever. It's not a constant flame that needs no tending. Desire is fueled by discovery, by presence, by the mystery of not fully knowing someone and the joy of continuing to learn them. What kills desire in relationships more than anything else is not time, not even familiarity. It's the absence of curiosity. When we stop being curious about our partner, when we assume we already know everything there is to know, desire begins to quietly die. In the beginning, curiosity is natural. You want to know everything about the other person, their favorite music, their childhood stories, their dreams, their fears. Every detail feels important. Every answer feels like a key to understanding them better. There's a spark, a sense of wonder, an excitement about who they are and how they see the world. That curiosity creates tension and anticipation. It builds emotional and physical desire because you are actively exploring someone else's inner world. But over time, something shifts. Life gets busy, familiarity sets in, we begin to replace questions with assumptions. Instead of asking how their day really was, we assume we already know. Instead of wondering how they're changing, growing, or struggling, we label them with the version we've grown comfortable with. We put our partners into boxes and stop exploring who they're becoming. And without even realizing it, we stop seeing them clearly. We start looking at who they were instead of who they are now. Desire lives in the space between what we know and what we're still discovering. When that space closes, when we act like there's nothing new to learn, the energy that fuels desire disappears. It's not that love goes away. It's not that commitment weakens. But passion fades because passion needs room to breathe. It needs newness, not necessarily in the form of new people, but in the form of new awareness. Curiosity is a form of intimacy. It tells your partner, I'm still interested in you. I still want to know you. You still matter enough for me to ask. It keeps the connection alive because it invites your partner to keep showing up authentically rather than playing a role they feel locked into. When you ask your partner something unexpected, when you're genuinely interested in their thoughts, their body, their emotions, you awaken a part of the relationship that often lies dormant after years of routine. On the other hand, when curiosity dies, conversations become surface level, sex becomes mechanical or absent, affection becomes routine or forgotten. You might still love each other, but the energy that makes love feel alive, desire, interest, surprise, starts to vanish and become more like business partners than lovers, managing schedules and logistics instead of building connection. Bringing curiosity back doesn't require dramatic changes. It starts with simple questions, small gestures, quiet attention. Ask something you've never asked before. Pay attention to how your partner's tastes or opinions might have evolved. Initiate touch not out of habit, but out of a real desire to connect. Try something new together, not just for the novelty, but for the shared experience of discovery. Curiosity means being willing to be surprised again. It means letting go of the belief that you know everything there is to know about the person you love. It's an act of humility and presence. And when you approach your relationship this way, desire doesn't just return, it grows. Because nothing is more attractive than feeling seen, not just as you were, but as you are now. Curiosity invites that kind of vision. And from that vision, real passion, real intimacy can thrive again. Closeness in a relationship is not measured by how much time two people spend together or how physically near they are to one another. You can share a bed, a home, a life, and still feel miles apart. Proximity creates the illusion of closeness, but real closeness is emotional. It's built not through routine contact, but through vulnerability. It's the willingness to let someone see you fully, not just the parts you're proud of, but the parts you usually hide. Without that kind of openness, intimacy remains shallow, no matter how long you've been together. At the beginning of a relationship, vulnerability often comes naturally. There's excitement in revealing your thoughts, your past, your quirks. Each conversation peels back another layer, and that process creates a deep emotional bond. But as time goes on, vulnerability can become more difficult. Maybe you've been hurt. Maybe you've learned to protect yourself, even from the person you love. Or maybe the demands of daily life have slowly shifted the relationship from emotional exploration to task management. In that shift, vulnerability often disappears. And with it, so does real closeness. True vulnerability isn't just about sharing secrets. It's about expressing needs, admitting fears, and being honest when you feel disconnected or uncertain. It means being willing to say, I miss you, even when you see each other every day. It's being able to say, I don't feel desired or I'm struggling without worrying that those words will be used against you. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the foundation of trust. It tells your partner, I trust you enough to show you the real me. Without vulnerability, relationships become emotionally shallow. You might laugh together, work together, raise a family together, but if neither of you feels truly seen, the connection starts to feel hollow. You start holding back. You stop asking deep questions. You avoid difficult conversations. You stay busy because silence feels uncomfortable. Over time, that distance grows, and even if you're in the same room, your hearts might be in completely different places. The problem is that many of us have been taught that closeness is a byproduct of presence. That if we're physically around each other often enough, emotional connection will take care of itself. But it doesn't. Emotional connection requires intentional effort. It requires conversations that go beyond how was your day and into what's been on your mind lately. It requires the courage to show emotion, to apologize sincerely, to say I need you and mean it. Creating closeness through vulnerability also means creating safety. If your partner opens up and gets met with defensiveness or dismissal, they'll stop sharing. They'll withdraw to protect themselves. But when vulnerability is met with empathy, with listening instead of fixing, with presence instead of reaction, that's when two people move closer together, not just in space, but in spirit. One of the most damaging myths about long-term relationships is that closeness should be automatic. It's not. It's created. And it's recreated over and over again through the brave act of being real with one another. Vulnerability is the bridge. It's how we remind each other, I'm here, I'm human, and I want to be close, not just next to you, but with you. So if you feel disconnected, start there, not with more time, but with more truth. Not with more gestures, but with more honesty. Because real closeness is not about sharing a space. It's about sharing your heart. And that only happens when we are willing to let our guard down and let each other in. Love rarely disappears in a single moment. It doesn't just vanish, even if it sometimes feels that way. What actually happens, more often than not, is a slow and quiet drifting apart. People say we fell out of love as if it was something outside their control. But falling out of love is not a sudden drop. It's a gradual separation that happens when we stop choosing each other. Every day in small ways, we either turn toward or away from our partner. And when we stop turning toward them, when we stop showing up with intention and care, that's when the drift begins. In the early stages of love, choosing each other feels effortless. There's curiosity, excitement, and a natural desire to prioritize the other person. You make time, you ask questions, you listen deeply. You go out of your way to make the other person feel seen and valued. But as the relationship settles into routine, that energy can fade. Life becomes crowded with responsibilities, work, kids, bills, stress. And the relationship quietly slips to the background. We stop checking in, we start reaching out, we start assuming instead of asking. And slowly, the connection we once nurtured with intention begins to weaken. What's often misunderstood is that love is not just a feeling, it's a daily practice. It's a choice we make over and over again, especially on the hard days. Feelings are important, but they are also fleeting. They rise and fall. What keeps a relationship alive is not the constant presence of romantic feelings, but the consistent commitment to choose each other, even when it's not easy, even when the spark feels dim. Choosing each other means staying curious. It means continuing to learn about your partner, even years into the relationship. It means recognizing that they are not the same person they were at the beginning, and neither are you. People evolve, and when we don't choose to grow with each other, we grow apart. Choosing each other means having hard conversations instead of avoiding them. It means offering grace, not keeping score. It means noticing when your partner is distant, not to criticize them, but to understand them. It's asking, what's going on, instead of saying, you've changed. Drifting happens not because of one big mistake, but because of 100 small moments of neglect. It's not remembering to say thank you. It's skipping the kiss goodnight. It's avoiding eye contact during a fight. It's not asking how they're really doing. It's choosing comfort over connection. It's forgetting that love, while powerful, is fragile when left untended. Reconnection doesn't require grand gestures. It begins with awareness and the willingness to act on it. It starts with small, intentional choices. Texting them just to say you're thinking about them. Asking meaningful questions. Sitting a little closer. Listening without distraction. These choices rebuild the emotional bridge. They remind each other, I still choose you. The truth is, love doesn't die easily, but it does require care. When couples say they fell out of love, they're often describing the result, not the process. The process was made up of quiet decisions to not engage, not talk, not listen. But just as we can drift apart, we can also drift back if both people are willing to choose each other again. Every relationship reaches a point where love feels less like magic and more like work. But it's the kind of work that, when done with presence and care, creates something lasting, something deep, something real. Because love isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you build, lose, and rebuild over and over again by simply choosing each other one day at a time.